Let's talk a little bit about the healthcare space. I mean, I think it's so in the sort of tech world, right? There's versus pharma, which is kind of different, like biotech, and has its own set of entrepreneurs and VCs, and I think people like you and me probably aren't. It's just a different world. And that's sort of perceived to be an area where it's like, you have to invest $300 million and get FDA approval, and then there's the sort of the kind of IT space, which I think the perception I have as someone who does some angel investing and things is that it's a scary market because it's really complex, because doctors are perceived to be late adopters, or it's not like they're like out there saying I need a new appointment system to like as you just described, like they just sort of, if it works, it's good enough. And there's just been a lot of, I mean, I think you're one of the few examples I can think of people that have kind of navigated this world. Can you talk a little bit about that space and what you think is going on?
Sure. So I think that there's so many problems to solve in healthcare. And I think one of the interesting things about healthcare traditionally is that, we all look at healthcare from a couple of lenses. We're all patients, so we're always looking at our patient through our patient lens. And we're also, those of us that are investors, look at it through an investor lens. And I think oftentimes those two lenses get blurred together. So what oftentimes happens is that people think, well, okay, great, this technology is great for a patient. So of course, it makes perfect sense. It would be great to have all of your medical records located in one place. Who wouldn't want that? Yeah. Of course I'm going to invest in this kind of company.
Which is sort of like what Google Health, for example, tried to do.
Exactly. Yeah. But then the reality of it is, what is the cost of getting that information in there? Either the patient has to enter it in, or the doctor has to enter it in. The patient's not going to have an incentive to enter it in unless they have some chronic medical condition where they really want, you're not going to spend an hour entering all the minutia of every doctor's appointment if you can avoid it.
Plus, you might not even have the expertise to, right?
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of it's exactly technical. Or
exactly, and from a physician's perspective, the same thing's true with them. They get paid based on the number of patients that they see, and they want to be, they want to spend time with their patient, not entering systems information into a system.
You'd mentioned. We were talking earlier about an example where people had implemented electronic health records in the doctor and the utilization or something like a drop 20.
Exactly. So one of the major hospital systems that's a client of ours actually implemented electronic health records probably about 18 months ago, and utilization across the board of the physicians dropped 20%. So again, I think that to answer your question,
when you say utilization, you mean people that just the number of doctors who
the amount of time that doctors have been able to spend with patients, and hence the number of patients they can see.
I see. The number of total number of patients they can see dropped.
Dropped because they're spending all their time entering something into a system versus scribbling something on a piece of paper and being done with it.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely healthcare there's so many opportunities for efficiency gains, but the reality of it is the doctor's time is the most valuable thing. And so a lot of technology that's been implemented thus far has not recognized that, and they've just thought about what's great for the patient, which doctors care about, but they also need to stay in business, and they need to have, if something can do both things that make them more efficient, make their patients happier, make them run better, what have you. If it can achieve all these different things, then I think it's a win-win, and it's something that can be adopted quickly because doctors are just really smart, and they're not going to buy something that's not going to be great for their practice, great for their patients. And if you can achieve both of these things, which ZocDoc does, right? We help patients get access to doctors when they need it, and we help doctors improve the quality of care that they're giving to their patients, and quite frankly to fill their open appointment times. So it's a win-win, and so in that regard, we've been able to very quickly get doctor adoption. So what investors have traditionally thought that perhaps selling to doctors is scary or they're slow to adopt, I actually don't agree with that. And I think that's what the contrarian perspective
They just didn't understand the proper sort of way to align incentives.
Exactly. They're just not going to buy something that's not good for them.
Yeah.
Just like any other customer, and people just lose sight of that in healthcare. And I think it's one of the keys to ZocDoc's success is that we haven't.
And so people talk about, you hear politicians talking about how, so for example, electronic health records are critical for lowering the growth rate of healthcare costs or something.
Yeah.
I mean, how could people attack those problems, for example, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like of social importance beyond economic, like financial.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's lots of technology solutions, and it's not. The reality of it is, this is.
It's not a tech problem. Yeah. I mean, it's an easy tech problem, right? It's the problem is how do you get it adopted? How do you get it out there, right? I mean.
I think it's very important for people to stay really, really focused within healthcare. This is a $2.7 trillion industry. Right, so someone comes up, there's not a software solution that's going to enhance and make every aspect of the industry more efficient from day one, but there's bunch of discrete problems, of which ZocDoc is solving one of them.
Yeah.
That are big, huge problems if you think about the size of the industry.
Yeah.
And I think
So
that's...
you think people have to sort of come at it, entrepreneurs have to kind of pick off pieces here and there, and then hopefully spread out?
It's all about focus, because if you look at everything that's tried to revolutionize healthcare in aggregate, there's a lot of disruptive companies from a lot of very accomplished entrepreneurs. They apply what they want to do to healthcare. It's too big. You can't take a moving ship and move it with trying to basically do everything. And so I think that the key to being successful, there's so many problems in healthcare, and what I really am very proud about is how many, there's a number of different healthcare incubators that have come out. There's a lot of healthcare startups that I think are starting, that are solving a lot of really cool problems. But I think the key to success really is to stay hyper-focused and not lose sight of who you're selling to and what they want, and ultimately what their primary need is. And as long as you're able to do that, I think you can sell to doctors, you can get a physician adoption. It's just very important to stay focused.
You were also saying earlier that one of the fundamental problems is just a sheer shortage of doctors. Is that right?
Yeah, it's on average in the United States, people wait 20 days to find a doctor. And in some states like Massachusetts, they wait 40 days. With healthcare,
that's because of the healthcare reform there, which gave more people health insurance, thanks to Mitt Romney.
Exactly. 500,000 more people in Massachusetts in 2006 got access to healthcare.
And the problem is, I think, so it's partly what you're solving with ZocDoc, which is the just helping people find the doctor. But part of it's simply just a sheer lack of supply of doctors. Correct?
Exactly. And so one of the things that we like to talk about at ZocDoc that's not intuitive to people is that there's a hidden supply of healthcare, which is 10 to 20% of the time, a patient will cancel their appointment in the last minute. And there's no mechanism to broadcast that appointment out to everyone. Now, I actually just got off the plane 3 days ago from New Year's, and as I was getting off the plane, I actually twisted my knee. And it was 4:30 in the morning, and it just so happened that I was able to get a last-minute doctor's appointment with a great doctor in New York. And it was clearly an appointment that had perhaps been canceled that night or a few hours prior. And there would have been no mechanism for me to be able to get that doctor's appointment prior to ZocDoc. And that's the beauty of what we're doing, because these are appointments that would go unfilled, and ultimately you remain not being able to satiate the patient need. Yeah. And versus with our system, it becomes much more efficient. You can, with the click of a mouse, find the one doctor out of 100 or out of 1,000 who can see you this afternoon. Yeah. And that's that level of efficiency, we think, will help combat a major part of the expected doctor shortage from healthcare reform.
And so what's it sounds like you just simply going to new city. I mean, what's in store for the future of ZocDoc? It sounds like you have sort of tons of things just simply by or ways to grow simply by going to new cities.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I assume there's other ways you could probably also expand horizontally or something throughout the doctor's office, right?
Yeah, it's such a huge market, and for us, just expanding, wanting to make ZocDoc nationwide has been our goal from day one. Yeah. And so, we're hyper focused on that goal. Clearly, if there's other ways that we can enhance our offering to make it even easier for patients to access doctors, those are things we'll be adding to our platform, and it's really all about, again, putting patients first and listening to what the patients want, and we will obviously be building more services, and it's all oriented around improving access to healthcare, though. Yeah.
And what, as an entrepreneur, can you, if people watching are starting companies or thinking about it, like, what are some sort of top pieces of advice you might give?
Yeah, I think I have sort of a 5-part formula for what makes startups successful. Mm-hmm. So I think having great people is very important. I think you want to stay focused. So not trying to solve every problem. Mm-hmm. I think you need to have you need to have time. You need to have the runway, and you need to go after a very large market. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately, if you have these things, you're inevitably going to be a successful entrepreneur. So
let's talk about the one you said, the runway, which I think is might be the more interesting, I think, in some sense, because I think from the outside people perceive, ZocDoc, it's this overnight success or something. But in fact, often these things, it can be a great idea, great team, great market. And I think, I think you alluded to earlier, you spent 2 years sort of iterating and figuring it out, right? Yeah.
So what happened with us, we wanted to make sure that we had that runway. We knew that the business was sound in the sense that patients wanted to book doctor's appointments online.
Just like when you raised your first round, did you sort of build that into the plan and say, hey, we need 24 months? I mean, like, for example, I see people now raising 12 months, and I'm like, is that really?
Well, I'll tell you, I ran an internet company prior to ZocDoc, after I left Trilogy. Mm-hmm. And I think the business itself was a sound one, but I think that we just didn't have enough runway such that we hit a fundraising cycle. We thought we had a deal closed, and in the final hour, it fell apart, and we didn't have enough money to sort of recover from that. And so one of the old adages of fundraising is never raise money when you need it. And I think I got, being an entrepreneur, if you're really committed to what you're doing, it's like giving birth. I mean, we all can appreciate that. It's just not a child, it's a company, but you think about it the same way. You have the same emotional tie. And it was such a painful process for me having to recover from that, that I sort of vowed never to be in that position again. So we launched ZocDoc. We stayed in New York, and that's I think we partly benefited from the financial crisis because people assume that you're never going to be able to raise money again, and so the paranoia that entrepreneurs often would have that someone's going to take my idea, replicate it, in another market and take me on. We did, that was a secondary need, the need of just survival. And ironically enough, we've had a few very lucky moments in our company's existence. And one of the things that happened to us in 2008, we entered this competition on Forbes.com where people got to vote for the top small business in America, and we happened to win. And we won a $100,000 check as a result of that. And that was the first money that we used. Had we not won that money, we didn't have enough money to actually expand to our next new market. And we used that money to expand to DC. And we proved that ZocDoc then, it wasn't just a New York phenomenon, because once we made New York successful, everyone then all of a sudden, even the naysayers who told us initially it would never work, were then saying, well, of course it's going to work in New York, but will it work anywhere else in the country? And I think it was that element of luck that helped us expand to another new market and prove that this is something universal. Booking, even if you look at restaurants, it's not universal that everyone in the country books their restaurants online. There's certain, when I was living in Florida or even Texas, it wasn't as common as it is in New York, people do booking restaurants online, but everywhere in the country, people call doctors to book appointments. And so we were really fortunate we were able to prove that out. And so, I think to some extent, we've taken the lessons that we've had in the early days of ZocDoc and still applied them. So even though, we've got, a great deal of money in the bank, we're still very frugal. I still share hotel rooms with my co-founders when we travel. We still have secondhand furniture across the board, as pretty much every piece of furniture in ZocDoc. And, we obviously spend money where we need to, but we're not, we realize the benefits of making sure you have as much time in the bank as possible, and that's part of what's made it successful.
That's great advice. We're out of time, but thanks so much for being here.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.